Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I will explain to you another topic of chapter biodiversity, that is history of classification system. In ancient time, the organisms were classified into two groups, animals and plants. And animals were classified on the basis of their habitat like air, water and land. Similarly, the plants were also classified on the basis of size, that is small, medium, large, and this was done by Aristotle, who was a Greek philosopher. In 1700, Abu Usman Umar al-Jahiz described the characteristics of 350 species of animals. He was the person who also described the life cycle of ants. Ibn Rushd, who was judge in Seville, he translated Aristotle De Anima on the Soul into Arabic in 1172. His original commentary is now lost, but its translation into Latin is still available. Andrew Cisalpino, who was Italian botanist, he classified plants and he divided the plants into 15 groups, and that group was called genera. John Ray, English naturalist, he published important work on plant classification. Augustus Ravenus, who was a German botanist, he introduced the taxon of order. Tournefort, who was French botanist, he introduced categories of class, section, genus and species. Carolus Linnaeus, who was a Swedish biologist, he also classified the organisms into two groups, and the two kingdom names were Plantae and Animalia. He was also famous for introducing a system of binomial nomenclature in which organisms are given the scientific names. What is shown in this picture? Yes, on one side plants are shown, on the other side animals are given. So the organisms were classified into two kingdoms, and that is named as two kingdom classification systems. According to two kingdom classification system, which was done by Carolus Linnaeus, the organisms are placed in Plantae or Animalia kingdom. In Plantae kingdom, the plants, bacteria, algae and fungi were placed, while in Animalia, the animals and protista were placed. But there were some drawbacks of the two kingdom classification system. And what were those drawbacks of two kingdom classification system? Like Euglena. In some characteristics, Euglena resemble plants, while in some characteristics it resembles animals. Like plant, it has chlorophyll, but in the absence of light, then this animal also can take food from other sources, means that it also have heterotrophic mode of nutrition in darkness, and the cell wall is also not present like animals. So such type of organisms should be placed in a separate kingdom. Similarly, the fungi was also not properly placed in the two kingdom classification system. The fungi differs in structure, physiology, reproductive details from plants, but the fungi were placed in plants. Similarly, the dinoflagellates and diatoms, they are unicellular plant-like organisms. The protozoans are animal-like organisms. The bacteria are another type of unicellular organism. In some characteristics, these organisms resemble each other, like they are unicellular, they reproduce by binary fission, but they were placed in different kingdoms. So, to overcome these drawbacks, three kingdom classification system was introduced, and this three kingdom classification system was introduced by Ernst Haeckel. He introduced a third kingdom, that is Protista, along with kingdom Animalia and kingdom Plantae, and the Euglena like organisms were placed in kingdom Protista. He also included bacteria in kingdom Protista, but the fungi were still placed in Plantae kingdom. Again, the drawbacks of three kingdom classifications were there. Number one, no differentiation between the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. It means that the organisms were not classified according to the cell type. Some prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms were placed in the same group according to three kingdom classification system. Like the bacteria and Euglena paramecium, they were placed in kingdom Protista. The bacteria is made up of prokaryotic cell, while the paramecium Euglena are made up of eukaryotic cell. So they were not properly placed in the kingdoms. Similarly, fungi are not autotroph. They have absorptive mode of nutrition. Their cell wall is also different from plants. The plant's cell wall is made up of cellulose, and the cell wall of fungi is made up of chitin. So, to overcome those drawbacks, another system of classification, that is five kingdom classification system, was introduced. And for the first time, E. Chaitin in 1937 used the terms prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic for bacteria-like organisms and eukaryotic for animals and plant-like organisms. Along with E. Chaitin, Robert Whittaker classified the organism into five kingdoms. And the basis of classification into five kingdoms were level of organization, type of cell. Level of organization means that the organism is made up of one cell or more than one cell, unicellular or multicellular. Type of cell means the organism is made up of prokaryotic cell or eukaryotic cell. So, according to five kingdom classification system, the prokaryotes were placed in a separate kingdom and the eukaryotic organisms were placed in different other kingdoms. Along with the level of organization and the type of cells, the mode of nutrition was also considered during five kingdom classification system. The biologists also considered that the mode of nutrition is photosynthetic, absorptive, or ingestion. According to five kingdom classification system, the photosynthetic organisms were placed in separate kingdom. The absorptive mode having organisms were placed in a separate kingdom, and those having ingestions were placed in another different kingdom. Then two biologists, that is Lynn Margulis and Carolyn Schwartz, in 1988, along with these bases, they also considered the genetics as a basis for classifying the organisms into five kingdoms. And these were the five kingdoms in which the organisms were classified. That is, number one, Monera, in which the prokaryotes were placed, bacteria-like organisms were placed. In the second kingdom, Protista, unicellular and simple multicellular organisms which are made up of eukaryotic cells were placed, while the fungi were given a separate kingdom. Similarly, the plants and animals were also placed in separate kingdom. So the five kingdoms are now Monera, Protista, fungi, Animalia, and Plantae. So this was all about the history of five kingdom classification system along with the other classification systems. Thank you.